Manasi Mishra did everything they tell you to do. She went to a respected university, and she earned a degree in computer science, supposedly the safest, most future-proof career on the planet. Then she spent an entire year looking for a job in her field. The only interview she could get in that whole year was at Chipotle, and she is nowhere near alone. The unemployment rate for recent computer science graduates in America has climbed to around 6%, which is higher than the rate for people who majored in art history. Job postings for software developers have fallen by roughly 2/3 since the start of 2022, and employment among the very youngest developers, the 22 to 25-year-olds, is down about 20%. For 100 years, the advice was simple. Get a degree, get a desk job, and you'll be safe from the machines. That advice just stopped being true. This is the story of the first generation being quietly replaced by artificial intelligence, and the much bigger question hiding underneath it: who's next? And this moment is different from every past panic about machines taking jobs in one important way. This time, the companies aren't denying it. They're bragging about it. Take Klarna, the buy now pay later company. Its CEO, Sebastian Siemiatkowski, proudly announced that a single AI assistant is now doing the work of 700 full-time customer service agents. The company's headcount has dropped from around 7,000 people to roughly 3,000, and Siemiatkowski says it could fall below 2,000 within a few years. Salesforce laid off about 4,000 customer support workers, and its billionaire founder, Mark Benioff, said flatly that AI can now do half of the work. IBM replaced hundreds of its human resources staff with AI software. Amazon's CEO, Andy Jassy, told shareholders to expect the company to run with, in his words, significantly fewer managers. And the loudest warning of all came from inside the industry itself. Dario Amodei, the chief executive of the AI lab Anthropic, said that AI could wipe out half of all entry-level white-collar jobs and push unemployment as high as 10 to 20% within 5 years. These aren't protesters or pessimists. These are the people building the thing, telling you out loud that it's coming for the work. So, how big does this actually get? The predictions are all over the map, and both sides reach for whichever number suits them. So here they are, side by side. Goldman Sachs estimates that around 300 million jobs worldwide are exposed to AI automation, and that over the next decade, 6 to 7% of all workers could be displaced. The International Monetary Fund goes higher, putting it at 40% of every job on Earth, and about 60% in rich countries like the United States. And then there's the other side of the ledger. The World Economic Forum, looking at the exact same future, predicts that by 2030, yes, about 92 million jobs will be destroyed, but 170 million new ones will be created, for a net gain of 78 million jobs. So, which is it? A jobs apocalypse or a jobs boom? The honest answer is that nobody actually knows, but pay attention to the one word that keeps showing up in the frightening numbers: exposed. Being exposed to AI is not the same thing as being replaced by it, and that gap is exactly where the story gets complicated, because something is genuinely new about this particular wave. Every previous time machines came for human work, they came for our hands. The assembly line took the factory worker, the tractor took the farmhand, the automated switchboard took the telephone operator. It was always physical, repetitive labor, and the way out was always to move up into thinking work, into an office. This is the first wave of automation that comes for the thinking work itself, for writing, coding, analysis, legal research, and customer service, the exact white-collar jobs people went into debt to qualify for. That is the real reason wealthy countries are the most exposed of all. The more of your economy runs on people sitting at desks, the more of it sits directly in the blast radius. For the first time in history, the degree isn't the shelter from the storm, it's the lightning rod. But before you go and panic, there's a twist almost nobody talks about, and it cuts hard in the other direction, because a lot of what gets blamed on AI might not really be AI at all. Here are the numbers that don't make the headlines. In 2025, American companies cut more than 1.2 million jobs, the most since the pandemic. And out of all of those, how many actually blamed artificial intelligence? About 55,000 of them, or roughly 4.5%. Even stranger, when the state of New York started letting companies officially check a box on their layoff paperwork saying the cuts were due to automation, not a single one of the 160 companies that filed checked it, including companies that were, at that very same moment, telling their investors how much money AI was saving them. Amazon's CEO Andy Jassy bragged about AI cutting jobs, then quietly admitted that the recent layoffs were, in his words, not really AI-driven. Not right now. Even the clearest case is murky. UPS cut 48,000 jobs last year, and at its newest hub, robots now outnumber human workers by about 15 to 1. But when you ask UPS why it really cut those jobs, the answer isn't AI. It's that fewer people are shipping packages. The uncomfortable truth is that for a lot of companies, blaming the robots is simply a better story to tell shareholders than admitting you overhired and now you're slashing costs. AI is the perfect scapegoat because it makes a plain old layoff sound like the future arriving. So maybe this is all just fear. We have, after all, been here before. In 1900, around 41% of all American workers were employed producing food. By the year 2000, that number had collapsed to roughly 2%. Tractors and machines wiped out almost an entire profession. And yet the country did not end up with 40% of its people permanently unemployed. Those workers, or more honestly, their children, moved into jobs that nobody in 1900 could have pictured. Whole new industries appeared to absorb them. That is the optimist's case, and it is a serious one. David Autor, the MIT economist who is probably the world's leading expert on automation and work, argues that AI could actually do something good. It could rebuild the middle class by letting an ordinary nurse or paralegal do the kind of expert work that today sits locked behind years of expensive training. But here's the part almost everyone skips. Autor is careful to say that this good outcome is possible, not likely, and that it almost certainly won't happen on its own without deliberate choices about how we use the technology. And it's telling that even Dario Amodei, the man who predicted a white-collar bloodbath, has already started walking his own prediction back. So, which is it, doom or boom? The part that actually matters is the one both the optimists and the doomsayers tend to skip. Even if the optimists turn out to be completely right, even if AI creates more jobs than it destroys in the long run, history is brutally clear about two things in the meantime. The first is that the transition is savage and uneven. The factory town does not smoothly transform into a software hub. The 50-year-old who loses his job rarely gets one of the shiny new ones. And an entire generation, like the graduates we started with, can lose a decade of their working lives just waiting for the future to show up. The second thing is the one almost nobody in charge wants to say out loud. The money saved by replacing you does not come back to you. When a company cuts 1,000 jobs and lets the software do the work, that saved salary doesn't get shared with the public. It flows straight up to the shareholders and the executives. Strip away the noise, and what you're really watching might be the largest quiet transfer of money from workers to owners in living memory. The people building all of this are not blind to where it leads. In fact, they're already pitching you the cushion. Sam Altman, the head of OpenAI, once ran an experiment that handed ordinary people $1,000 a month for nothing, a basic income. Now he talks about something he calls an American equity fund, where the biggest AI companies would pay a slice of their value, around 2.5%, into a pot that gets shared out to every citizen. He's even floated giving everyone a chunk of raw AI computing power, to use or to sell. Read that generously, and it's a real attempt to share the wealth of the machines with the people they displace. Take it cynically, and it's the people automating your job offering you a small monthly allowance so you don't get angry enough to do something about it. You can decide for yourself which one it is, because this is the only verdict the story honestly supports. The disruption is real, and the long-term outcome is genuinely unknown. And whatever happens, the transition is going to land hardest on the people with the least power to survive it. You've seen the facts now. What they add up to is your call. And there's one more thing worth knowing before you go. The same companies building AI to replace you at work are building something else with it, aimed in a very different direction. Out at the street, the camera, and the crowd. The very same kind of system that now decides who gets hired and fired is now being trained to decide who gets watched and who gets flagged. Next time we step into the AI surveillance state, subscribe because you are going to want to know exactly who's watching.